Hello, this is your next door neighbor, and we are in part 8 of our series talking about social issues. In our previous issues, we dealt with money, and now we're dealing with discrimination against women. That is a social issue. And how did Jesus handle it? So we saw that we looked at two gruesome examples in the previous parts where women weren't treated too well. I'm going to go on further to tell you a little bit more about things that was happening. Even because of the fact that sin, people started to get 2 wives and 3 wives. Now they started to have concubines and different things like that. Now I want to see even Solomon, considered the wisest man that ever lived. In 1 Kings 11, verse 1 and 3, it says in 1 Kings 11, it says that Solomon loved a lot of strange women. So you can read that 1 Kings, and I could tell you Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1st and 2nd Samuel, 1st and 2nd Kings. So we're reading 1 Kings 11, verse 1 and 3. And it will tell you that Solomon liked a lot of strange women. Women that weren't of his faith. He was really into them, and they turned his heart against God. Furthermore, it says that he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. The wisest man that ever lived. Now, what does Jesus do about this issue with how women were being treated? Let's move on. We understand the different things that was happening. Number one, we agree that men had many wives as a result of sin. Women only had rights if they were with a man, if they had a man. Women were whores when they slept around. Men were not labeled as whores when they slept around. So how does Jesus change the tide or for the unfairness? We're going to look at a couple of issues in the New Testament. Okay? Let's go to John 8. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. John is in the New Testament. We're going to Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. We're reading John 8, verse 3. And it says, just bear with me, I'm almost there. Yeah, John 8, verse 3. And the scribes and Pharisees brought unto him a woman taken in adultery, and when they set her in the midst, they say unto her, Master, this woman was taken in adultery in the very act. Okay? This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down and with his finger wrote on the ground. He wrote as if he didn't hear them, like he was ignoring them. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself unto them. He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone with the woman. And when Jesus had lifted up himself, he saw none but the woman. He said unto her, Woman, where are those thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? She said, No man, Lord, no man. He said, Well, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. So we see one instance where God dealt with social injustice. We're going to read now Luke 8, verse 21. Luke 8, verse 21. Matthew, Mark, Luke. Luke 8, verse 21. Question is asked, how did Jesus respond, or how did he change the fate for women? Pretty much. Let's look at 8 verse 21. Okay, we see his answer, but I'm going to read before that. In Luke 8 verse 19, then came him his mother and his brethren, and could not come at him for the press. There was too much crowd. And it was told to him by certain which said, Thy mother and thy brethren stand without, desiring to see thee. And Jesus, he answered and said unto them, My mother and my brethren are these who hear the word of God and do it. Okay? Let's read John 19, verse 1 and 3. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. Now, it's a lot of material that we're reading here, and hopefully you're finding it also. So we're reading together, and I'd like you to read all the text when you do get a chance, and try to understand the context of what Jesus was saying and what it meant. So let's read John 19, verse 1 and 3. 19, verse 1 and 3. 1. 19. Oh, let me just make sure I got it right. John 19. I hope I didn't make the wrong text, and I do have it. I might have done that. John 19. Okay, so I'm sorry. It was John 19, correct? But it was verse 26. And it's John 19, verse 26, and it says, When Jesus therefore saw his mother and the disciples standing by, whom he loved, he said unto his mother, Woman, behold thy son. Then said he to the disciple, Behold thy mother. Then he said, Behold thy mother. And from that hour, that disciple took her into his own home. Then we're going to read finally John 4 verse 7. John 4 verse 7. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John. You should already be in John. And we're reading John 4 verse 7, and it says, There cometh a woman of Samaria to draw water. Jesus saith unto her, Give me water to drink. For his disciples were gone away unto the city to buy meat. Then saith the woman of the Samaria unto him, How is it that thou, being a Jew, asketh drink of me, which am a woman of Samaria? For the Jews have no dealings with Samaritans. So we read 3 issues here. 1, we have a woman caught in the very act of adultery. If you're caught in the very act, tell me, was she by herself? No. Why is it that the woman was brought and not the man? Stay tuned.